Hello, my name is Matthew Dipple with Airtight Engineering, and we're going to do our afternoon activity for the Getting Real About Home Energy Efficiency workshop for real estate agents here in Saskatchewan. So this exercise should happen right after Mod 5 if you're watching through the recorded version. So let's go through the exercise together, and then you can take some time to pause your video if you want, come up with some responses, and then we'll talk about some possible responses together. So take a few minutes to review the house photo handout, which you should have in your student resources. And I'll go through some slides with the pictures from that handout too. So you can also just pause the video on those slides. And we want to answer the following questions. So we've got a bunch of pictures from a house, and we've got a potential home buyer that's got the following questions. So the first one is, what are some possible energy upgrades to suggest on this home? What are some low-cost things that I can do to save energy in this home? Is this an efficient home? And is this home a good candidate for a deep energy retrofit? If so, why? If not, why not? Just a reminder, don't feel like you need to be an expert. Part of your answer can be to direct your client towards other resources too. So we've been talking a lot about resources that are out there in this workshop. And so feel free to, as part of your response, direct your client towards those. Okay, so I'm going to just pause for about 5 seconds. Oh, excuse me, pardon me. I'm going to pause for just about 5 seconds on the slide photos, or the photo slides rather, next. And so if you want to pause your video and just study those photos, come up with some responses, then we'll go through these questions together. Okay, so we took a look at some of those photos together. Now let's look through them and talk about some responses. So the first question there is, what are some possible energy upgrades to suggest on this home? And I want to just distinguish between that first and the second question. This first one, we're sort of thinking more about the deep energy retrofit that we talked about in the previous module, right? So, what are some big ticket things that we can do? Whereas that next question is really geared towards the low cost, right? So, uh, for answering question number 2, I'm going to be thinking more towards some habits, maybe some shallow retrofits, some kind of maintenance tips, that type of thing. So with that in mind, question 1, some possible energy upgrades to suggest. While looking through this home, I notice a few things. I'll just page through the pictures again. First thing I notice is on this page, I see it's got some older windows, right? I'm noticing old slider windows. I think that those could be upgraded for sure. Chances are they're double pane, not particularly airtight. So that's a good one to mention. I'm seeing some air sealing. This is probably even just a shallow retrofit at this point. Very poor air sealing at the bottom of this door and likely on the sides too. I see in the basement that they've got a bare concrete floor that's uninsulated. So insulation on the basement floor could be an option. Moving to the second photo set, attic insulation right here, I can see 12 inches to 13 inches. So it looks like they've got a decent amount of attic insulation. Could be more, but there's not a ton of space in this, um, especially down by the heel. But I would say attic insulation looks decent already. So they could certainly consider maybe some air sealing in the attic, but we can't see that from the pictures. This one over here, I see an older wood frame window. Looks like there's been some water damage around here, which tells me that this is probably a cold spot, probably a lot of air leakage happening here as well. And I can see that this looks like a double pane window. It's doesn't look to be very well insulated. I see metal aluminum spacers, which I know are don't perform very well. So this looks like a good spot for a replacement. Also, this basement window, it's literally broken. It's old, it's wood, it's single pane likely. So yeah, some definite window upgrades can happen here. And this picture over here, this is right underneath the main floor. It looks like there's some insulation batt that's been shoved in there, but probably this is not really sufficient in terms of level of insulation. Also, air tightness is a big concern here. So I would expect this to be an area of a lot of air leakage because fiberglass batt is not airtight, and also some potential moisture damage because we could have condensation happening behind this fiberglass too. So that would be another spot. Photo set 3, looking at the mechanical system a little bit. This is a high efficiency furnace. So their furnace is good. The way that you can tell is if it's got plastic pipes coming out of it, and this is where the exhaust gases are going from the furnace, this has to be high efficiency because if the exhaust gas were going through a plastic pipe and it were a low efficiency furnace, it would melt the pipe. That gas would have way too much heat left in it. Whereas a high efficiency furnace, it's able to extract 97% of the heat out of that exhaust gas. And so that gas going through is quite cool. You can put your hand on the pipe and it's warm but not super hot. So looking at that, I know this is a high efficiency furnace. Contrast that to the water heater. It's got this opening here, which means it's a natural draft water heater, and it's got a metal exhaust pipe, which means those exhaust gases are very hot. It's probably going up a chimney as opposed to out the side of the house. So this is an old, inefficient water heater. So this could be upgraded, definitely. Looking over here, I could see that they've got an HRV already. It looks like it's an Energy Star unit. I happen to know the Constructo isn't a particularly amazing HRV, but they've got one, right? So that's been done already. I would note that for an HRV, you don't need to know this, but both of these ducts should be insulated because they're both going to be bringing cold air to and from the outside, and only one of them is insulated. So that's something to consider there. Looking at their controls, they've got an HRV control, looks good, and they've got an old thermostat. So we could certainly recommend that they upgrade to a programmable or smart thermostat. And then remember that thermostat doesn't save energy on its own. You would have to then recommend turning down your temperature at night to save some energy. So that'd be my response to question 1. If there were any of these things that you didn't know or you weren't comfortable with, you certainly don't have to go outside of your comfort zone, and we don't want you to go outside of your area of expertise. You could also direct them to say, hey, I noticed 2 things. I noticed your windows are old and your basement has no insulation on the floor. Great. I would recommend that you get an EnerGuide audit, and they'll be able to give you much more detailed information and some quantitative numbers to back it up. So that's a great response too. Second question, what are some low-cost things I can do to save energy in this home? Well, some of these actually have, nothing to do with this particular home. They're just general advice that you could give, right? So something like washing your clothes in cold water. That's going to be a great one. If you plug your car in, using a timer on that car plug. So we can have some small kind of habits and things that we could recommend. In terms of what we can see in the pictures, a couple things that came to mind for me that would be smaller but would have a big impact were this weather stripping on this door. That's an easy fix that's going to have a big impact in terms of efficiency and also comfort. Another one was the thermostat. It's going to be pretty cheap, a few $100, and that could make a big difference as well. So that thermostat was something else that I thought of. Another thing that I thought of was recommending, maybe they don't have an air conditioner, recommending, or maybe they do have an air conditioner and they use it quite a lot. You could talk about a night flush, right? So opening all of your windows at night, having a fan that's blowing out of those windows, and then in the day, keeping them closed to prevent overheating. So that could be something else that we offer. We don't see the light bulbs in those pictures, but if you see lots of incandescent light bulbs, changing to LEDs, that's easy. That's a great one. Or low flow faucet aerators, or changing faucets for low flow versions and shower heads, another great option too. Question 3, is this an efficient home? This is kind of subjective. I would say it's got some things going for it, and it's got some things that need upgrading. So it's probably middle of the road, right? It's got old windows. Looks like there's some air tightness issues. There's some spots that could use insulating, but they've upgraded the insulation in the attic, it looks like. They've upgraded their furnace to a high efficiency version. They've got an HRV. So they've definitely done some work and got some stuff going for them. So I would say I would peg this as middle of the road. Some things need work and some things are in a good spot. And then the final question, is this home a good candidate for a deep energy retrofit? If so, why? If not, why not? When I look at this house, the first thing that I see is the form, the shape. It is a simple shape, which is going to make it easier and less expensive to do some of these bigger retrofit things on. So let's say you did want to add insulation to the walls, or let's say you're going to replace all of those windows. The fact that it is a smaller house, it's got smaller windows, and it's a pretty simple shape is going to make those jobs easier. So that's something that it's got going for it right away. Something else it has going for it is the fact that a lot of the aspects to the envelope do need upgrading or aren't particularly fancy or expensive. So it has simple vinyl siding. No big deal. If you want to take off that siding and put on more insulation, you aren't going to kind of cringe as you do that, right? Versus if it were some beautiful brick and you had no opportunity to insulate without covering it up, without either covering it up or going to interior insulation. So those are a couple things that I'm noting. Also, the fact that it seems like it's been cared for and is in general good repair, but there are still things left to do on it. Puts it in a good spot for some energy retrofits. So if you see a house that's got structural issues, we can't totally tell. I mean, this floor looks pretty good as far as Regina goes. We don't see any pictures of the foundation walls, but if it's got structural issues, if it's got big like kind of moisture concerns that have gone unchecked, or if you're going to have to spend way too much time and effort and money just making the building sound to begin with before starting in on an energy retrofit, then I would start to get a little cautious. But this house seems to be in good repair generally. And so we get to focus our energy if we want to on some of those energy improvements. Okay, so those are some of the things that I observed. Probably what you observed is different, and that's okay. And again, just that caveat, you're not supposed to be an expert, right? You're not supposed to be a building scientist or an engineer or a home inspector, an EnerGuide auditor. You are a real estate agent. The purpose of this exercise is just to help you start thinking a little bit so that you can point out to your client a couple of the things that you do notice. For myself, I know that when I've been looking for houses, I've been really impressed when my real estate agent was able to point out some of those technical aspects to me. The one that stands out for me was we had a real estate agent that pointed out to my wife and I about a foundation wall that was not true. They just put their eyeball on the side of the foundation. They said, "Oh, I could see that foundation wall is deflecting in." It was a simple thing to do. Anyone could see it. But to me, that really impressed me and showed me that they were observant and knew what they were talking about when it came to kind of the aspects of that home. So that's what this exercise was all about. All right, we'll see you in the next module.